I'm an enormous bull on the country. I mean, over time, this is the most remarkable success story in the history of the world, if you think about it. I mean, in 1790, we had less than 4 million people in this country. There were 290 million people in China. There were 100 million people in Europe, and they all had the same intellect we had. They were in the same general climate. They had lots of natural resources. And 215 years later, those 3.9 million people, I think, actually, have 30% or so of the world's GDP. So it does not make sense to bet against America. That doesn't mean all our policies are smart or anything, but I do not get pessimistic on the country.
The American miracle continued. But it's interesting in that at the start of 1954, the Dow was only at about 280. And I remember 1954 because it was the best year I ever had in the stock market. The Dow went from essentially 280 or thereabouts at the start of the year to a little over 400 at the end of the year. And when it went to 400, everybody wondered, is this 1929 all over again? Senator Fulbright, he called a special investigation, and he called it the stock market study. He really was questioning whether we had built another house of cards again. In March of 1955, with the Dow at 405, assembled 20 of the best minds in the United States to testify as to whether we were going crazy again because the market was at 400 and we'd gotten in this incredible trouble before. But that was the mindset of the country. We didn't really believe America was what it was. And my boss, when he testified with the Dow at 404, he had one line in there right toward the start in his written testimony, and he said, the stock market looks high, it is high, but it's not as high as it looks. You're looking at a market today that has produced $100 for every dollar. All you did was had to believe in America and just buy a cross-section of America. You didn't have to read the Wall Street Journal. You didn't have to look up the price of your stock. You didn't have to pay a lot of money in fees to anybody. You just had to believe that America was intact. Nothing can stop America when you get right down to it. The answer is never bet against America. It's true today as it was in 1789, and even was true during the Civil War and the depths of the Depression. We are now a better country, as well as an incredibly more wealthy country than we were in 1789. We're far from what we should be, will be, but we have gone dramatically in the right direction.
Now, the interesting thing is, this paper from 1942, since then, there have been 14 American presidents. Just since my young venture into the stock market at 11, I've lived under 14 of the 44 presidents the United States has had. Now they call Trump 45, but they count Grover Cleveland twice. So there's really only been 44 presidents of the United States. And 14 of the 44 have been during this period when that $10,000 became 51 million. 7 have been Republicans, 7 have been Democrats. 1 has been assassinated, 1 has resigned under pressure. It works, If you'd told me at the start, that you'd have a Cuban Missile Crisis and you'd have nuclear weapons and you'd have a panic in 2000, financial panic, and you'd have many recessions, and you'd have war in the streets in the late 60s from a divided country, you'd say, why the hell are you buying stocks? And through it all, America in fits and starts, but America really moves ahead. And we survived a civil war. I hate to think of having to do it that way, but this country, in only less than 3 of my lifetimes, if you go back 3 of my lifetimes, you go back 263 years, I guess, and Thomas Jefferson is 12 years old, and that's just 3, and there's nothing here. You've flown in from all over to Omaha today, and you flew over a country with more than 75 million owner-occupied homes and 260 million vehicles and great universities and medical systems and everything. And it's all a net gain in less than 3 of my lifetimes. So, and we've had these events since since I started buying my first stock. This country really, really works, and it always will have lots of disagreements, and after every election you'll have people feeling the world is coming to an end, and how could this happen? And I remember my future father-in-law in 1952, he wanted to have a talk with me before his daughter and I got married. So kind of reluctantly, I sat down with him, and he said, Warren, he said, there's just one thing I want to tell you. He said, you're going to fail. He said, the Democrats are going to get in, they're going to take over the country, and you're going to fail, but don't feel responsible for it because it's not your fault. I mean, he wanted to absolve me from this feeling that while his daughter was starving to death, it was my fault. And I kept buying stocks and doing a little bit better all the time. And if the Republicans were in, it was okay, and it was because of them that I was doing well. And if they were out, forget it, it was all going to disappear. So I've seen a lot of American public opinion over the years. I've seen a lot of media commentary. I've seen the headlines. And when you get all through with it, this country has 6 times the per capita GDP growth, the GDP per capita that it had when I was born. One person's lifetime, 6-for-1 change. Everybody in this room essentially is living better in multiple ways than John D. Rockefeller Sr. was, who was the richest person, in the world during my early years. And we're all living better than he could live. So this is a remarkable, remarkable country, and we found something very special.